Hello, everyone. Welcome to tonight's FPA Virtual Lounge event. My name is Stanley Philippe. I'm a recruitment officer here at Carleton University. I'm very excited to be chatting about tonight's featured program, the Bachelor of Economics. You know, I've been watching The Queen's Gambit on Netflix, and when I think about chess, I think about economics because this is a program where moves are being made constantly, and whether you know it or not, it's impacting every facet of our life. And so I'm really happy that you are all considering this amazing program here at our school. And I think tonight's conversation is going to give you a better idea and understanding of not only what you're going to be doing as a student, but what you can do with that degree moving forward in your personal and professional lives. So a lot of really great chatter that's going to happen tonight, and we want you to be driving the conversation bus. And so we encourage you to utilize the live event Q&A function. This will give you a chance to ask questions to our featured guests and hopefully really, again, get a better feel for your future program and for your future home. So definitely utilize tonight's live event Q&A. Now, we're going to be able to hear from two folks this evening, an associate professor in the Department of Economics and a fourth-year student who is studying in our Public Affairs and Policy Management program, but specializing in economic policy. So look out for that conversation in a little bit. But to start, I want to invite Patrick Coe, who is, again, an associate professor in the Department of Economics, to say a few words about the first year experience from a teaching perspective. So Patrick, you will be on screen very soon, and enjoy your chat with our audience members. And you are muted.
Thank you very much, Stanley. Thank you all for coming as well. As Stanley said, I'm one of the professors in the economics department. I teach, or currently teach, the section of first year economics that is geared towards students who are coming to do our B-Econ program. One of the things I like about teaching that course is similar to what Stanley was suggesting. Economics, we think, is really about everything in some sense. It's about how people make decisions when there's some form of scarcity. So this might be you only have so much time at your disposal. How do you allocate that time between different activities? You're here tonight. You're likely here tonight because you feel that the value to you that you're going to get out of listening to Dawson and I, asking Dawson and I questions, is going to be worthwhile. It's better than the other alternatives. I hope that decision turns out to be a good one. But that's an economic decision. You've got this scarce resource available to you, which is your time. You can't do everything you want. How do you allocate that time between the different competition for your time? And this applies everywhere. The obvious things in economics we talk about are firms. How do they make production decisions? How do they make supply decisions, pricing decisions, and so forth? It also applies in government and in policy. So often a policy that a government might make involves a trade-off between different things. If we think about something like the minimum wage, we increase the minimum wage. That's great for people who have a job and keep that job as the minimum wage goes up. But if that increased minimum wage leads to some unemployment, then we've made some people worse off. And so how do we deal with those trade-offs? And so that's one of the things that the economists really focus on is these types of decisions, both at the individual level, the firm level, and the policymakers level. I think the other thing that I like about economics is that when we do this analysis, we try to quantify things. So we really sort of focus not just on sort of saying this is good for this group, it's good for that group, but how can we measure these benefits and these costs in order to make informed decisions? So I think your first year experience is sort of very much sort of starting to try and teach you to think like an economist, to make how to analyze these situations in this way. And so we try to sort of start by getting you thinking that way. I'll move on to a little talk about the program. In the second year, we sort of try and develop those skills a bit further. We push your theoretical skills in economics a bit further. We give you more quantitative skills, how to start dealing with data and stuff like that. In third and fourth year, you'll sort of go off and specialize in, well, not necessarily specialize, but explore many different fields. You may choose to specialize, you may choose to explore lots of fields. We have a bunch of different concentrations in our program. A popular one is the financial economics concentration. One that we're about to bring in that we're very excited about is the one in data science. I'm sure you're aware that in this day of big data, being able to be literate with data and be able to answer questions with data is becoming increasingly important. So we're trying to sort of combine that with the economics training, with the way we think about how people make decisions and how we can inform policymakers through data, through the lens of economics. I had a few more things I was going to talk about. Success in the first year. So economics is very much, I think it's something you learn by doing. So we'll give you a textbook, we'll tell you to read the textbook, but the other thing we'll do is we'll give you a lot of problems to work on. And I think it's those problems that you work on will really develop your understanding of the material and how to analyze the types of questions that will pose you over the next 3 or 4 years. And so that's something I would really focus on when you're here is, obviously go to your lectures, listen to me, listen to the other folks, read the book, but really do the work for yourself. Sit down and try and work through these problems and develop your critical thinking skills. So those will really pay off, not just in economics, but those critical thinking skills will pay off much more widely not just in our program, but also in life in general. So that was my sort of practice spiel. The other thing I've got in my notes is don't shy away from the math. When I was a first year student, this was quite a long time ago, there was kind of 2 choices on the math route, and I took what I thought was the easier road. And I kind of feel I've been playing catch up for 30 years, as every time I have to learn a little bit more math. So do take on the difficult stuff. Like it pays off in the long run for sure. So that's, we'll ask you to do math courses. It's good for you. I would really encourage you to do those. Those skills will pay off in a lot of different places as well. I think that's it for me. I'm going to be here for questions. If you have questions about sort of the discipline, about the program, I'm happy to answer any of those. But I'll hand over to Dawson now, who will give you the student perspective.
Patrick, before we get Dawson in the conversation, there was actually a question about problems and how can economics be utilized to look at different problems like poverty, climate change, and so on. So maybe you can speak more about the application of economics in a kind of a real world context.
Yeah, sure. Probably a good one, and one we do look at in the first year. You mentioned climate change, so maybe I'll use that as the example. So climate change is something an economist would refer to as an externality. So let's imagine there's a factory that's producing paper. Let's say I'm buying that paper from the factory. So there's an economic transaction there between me and the firm or the factory that's producing the paper. But that factory is also producing some pollution, and let's say that pollution is landing on Stanley's back garden, and he's having to deal with all that smog, and he's made worse off. But he's not involved in that transaction that I have with the firm. And so how does the policymaker deal with that? And so one way the policymaker can deal with that is to try and figure out what is the cost that's imposed upon Stanley. And then and what we call a carbon tax is a way of dealing with that. So the policymaker might levy a tax on the firm that causes the firm to take into account the cost that the market activity between the firm and I is having on Stanley. And that is one way in which an economist would recommend we try and tackle climate change. We change the price of pollution in order that firms will do less of it. So again, it's very much a sort of a solution that asks the participants in the market to correct it from themselves rather than trying to regulate. One of the advantages, I think, of that way of dealing with the problem is it changes the incentives for market participants. We might say, you can only pollute, say, so many units of pollution, but then what's the incentive for the firm to go below that? But if we put a tax on, the firm has got incentives to think about R&D and other methods that can lower its pollution even further to avoid the tax that we're putting on it. And so it's really very much an incentives-based approach to trying to get better outcomes for society. So that might have been a bit long, Stanley, sorry.
No, that's good. That's good. You're getting warmed up, and hopefully we got some more questions coming our way too. So thank you for that, Patrick. And I'm just gonna hop back in the live to welcome the folks who may have arrived a little bit later on. We're having a conversation about the Department of Economics and our Bachelor of Economics here at Carleton, and we just got a great answer from a question from Patrick Coe, who is an associate professor in the Department of Economics. And so we really want to encourage you to ask your questions. You know, tonight is a night about helping you discover what you would like to know and what you may not know yet about our economics degree. And, you know, being a student in high school or looking at post-secondary, it isn't an easy task, and it's one that all of our current students have experienced in some way, shape, or form. And so I'm going to bring in a fourth-year student who is going to talk a bit about not only their kind of introduction to Carleton, but the way they've been able to utilize economics within their degree program. So please welcome me and join me in welcoming Dawson to the event.
Hey everyone, hope you guys are doing okay tonight. Fun fact, yeah, Stanley was actually the recruitment officer that convinced me to come to Carleton, so you guys are in good hands tonight. Yeah, economics. I'm actually not an economics student, but I'm a student of economic policy, and I think that that's incredibly relevant to the question we just had answered by Professor Coe, and how you can use economics to solve a lot of the problems that are imminent right now. And I think someone told me once that economics is the study of everything. It really, you can apply it to nearly every situation. And I think that was kind of the appeal for me. I'm not sure if some of you have had the privilege of taking an introductory economics course in high school. Some of you may have been that lucky. I was not. I took economics for the first time in first year, and truthfully, it was a learning curve. It's not necessarily easy, but if you put the work in, there's a lot you can learn. And frankly, after first year, if it's something that you like, you'll be hooked for the remainder of your university degree and probably for life. It's something that once you at least get a bit attached to, you don't really lose it. You kind of start seeing things a different way. It's very captivating, and you can use it in nearly any context. One of the great things about Carleton on whole is our co-op program. I was lucky enough to have that experience as part of my degree, and you may as well if you choose to take that option. But as we were talking about earlier, there are tons of jobs that look at your degree and go, oh, you have taken economics. It's a very good asset. It's widely accepted, and it gives you a great perspective on a variety of fields. You can take it to the government, as you're probably aware, is something huge in Ottawa, a lot of jobs there, but also the private sector, as well as non-government organizations. There are lots of opportunities provided by the university. And even if that isn't something that you choose to do, there are lots of research opportunities within the university, or even following your degree, that look for economics and say that, oh, that's something we could use. So I'm really glad that this is something you're considering at all. I think you're making a great decision. And then I think I'll just briefly touch on the student experience of going to university at all. And I think that, for one, great that you're considering that. And I'll say that first year is something, it's an experience like no other. You really go through a lot. It's a massive learning curve about life. You know, for many of you, it might be the first time you're on your own. You're looking out for you, and you really learn how to time manage. You need to figure out how to take care of yourself, be it cooking a meal or doing your laundry, whatever. I think that that is a very important learning curve in life, alongside all the university academic experience that you're going to gain. It's quite a lot to take in, I won't lie to you, but it's part of an amazing ride, and I think that might be all that I'll speak to right now. But please, if you have any questions, go right ahead, and I'll pass it back to Stanley.
Thanks, Dawson, and thanks for that shout out. It's great to see that, you know, all the hard work paid off on both fronts. So awesome to have you part of our community. I'm going to bring Patrick back into focus here because there were a couple of questions about some of the concentrations that are available within the program. So Patrick, I hope you could maybe speak a little bit to, there was a question about the international political economy concentration, as well as the concentration in natural resources and environmental economics. Maybe touch on those ones specifically, but also the intention behind the concentrations that are in place within economics. Oh, and sorry, Patrick, you're muted again. You're doing the right thing, but
I'm doing the right thing. I'm doing the right thing half the time, I think. Okay. The international political economy one. I will be honest. I'm not a big expert on an undergraduate program in terms of the sort of the ins and outs. My understanding here is this is one that sort of really combines the economics a little bit more sort of with the politics, in particular the international side of it. I know you'll take courses in international economics. I mean, I think one of the sort of the challenges sort of in the world in general is, as economists, we often think we can give good advice in terms of what's the right policy and what's going to kind of be best in some sense for the welfare of the citizens in our country. And then the challenge, of course, is getting that recommendation through legislation. And I think maybe economists are sometimes a little bit idealist in the sense that, well, this is the right thing to do. But then, of course, the challenge is the political side of getting that in place. So I certainly know in that concentration, I think you do some more courses in political science, which I think would probably be a good combination for someone who's interested in that sort of policy side. Although at the same time, I know Dawson's program is also sort of very, very strong on the sort of the applied policy type side as well. How do you apply kind of some of the lessons and get this policy in place? I saw again a little bit on the natural resources one. So the issue I spoke about a few moments ago about climate change, and that's kind of naturally a question that falls under the sort of resources and the environment question. I mean, there's obvious questions about sort of the extraction of resources. You know, if you think about using coal, fossil fuels, and so forth, clearly there's a cost to society of using those, but there's also benefits to society of using those. I mean, they generate electricity, and we're all using electricity right now. So how do we deal with those types of trade-offs? So I think it's those types of questions you can think about. I did notice in the question somebody asked, when do you decide what your concentration will be? I don't think you have to declare too soon. If you look at our sort of web page for the various concentrations, it will sort of give you a recommended course pattern, but it's really just a case of making sure you get the courses for that concentration by the time you graduate. So I don't think it's something I think you need to decide in your first year. In your first year, you'll take a fairly broad sweep through economics, both sort of the micro side, the macro side. I think that's when you start to get an idea of where you want to go in terms of what you find more interesting. You might find some of the ways in which we think about questions are different than you imagined coming in, and you might find that your interests change. So I would, in terms of concentrations, I would come in with a sort of fairly open mind. You might think I really want to do this one, but you might find you change your mind. I would. Early on, I would definitely talk to our undergraduate advisor, Renee, about how to get into these concentrations in terms of, you know, what procedures you need to follow. I don't think they're limited in terms of numbers, but I will be honest, I'm not involved in the undergraduate administration, so I'm not too sure. But do talk to undergraduate administrator. She's very nice, very helpful, very knowledgeable, and she'll be able to give you some advice on, you know, how to get into one if you are interested in it.
Yeah, and if we just add to that, you know, the beauty of having, you know, concentrations is to provide students, especially when they start their degree program, an idea as to where the degree will take them. And so, Patrick, like you mentioned, you know, if a student decides to apply to economics with a concentration in development, for example, they might then, during their first year, kind of recognize a greater interest in the financial side of economics. And so there's that concentration that's available. And by speaking with the departmental advisor, you're able to then kind of decipher when's the best time to really kind of stick to your concentration, or maybe to add to. You know, there's again a lot of kind of degree building building and molding that happens as you start to experience the university curriculum and start familiarizing yourself more with the terms and concepts that are going to be essential to your degree program. So for you folks out there that are thinking about, let's say, natural resources, environmental economics, you can definitely put that down in your application, and it's not going to hurt you or affect you in terms of getting in, but also navigating that first year. There's going to be some time, some room for you to kind of experience the courses and then shift or pivot if you need to do so during your degree. There was another question that came in, Patrick, about incorporating sports and economics, and I think that data science might be a really good one to think about. But what, in your opinion, have you seen folks kind of utilize econ to go into the world of sports?
To go into the world of sports, I've seen a little, not so much to go into it. We did have a PhD student a few years ago. His research was on the, and I'm a soccer fan. I don't know too much about sort of North American sports, but his research was on the effect of the Boltzmann ruling, which is something that happened in Europe, where when a player came to the end of their contract, they could move for free, and as opposed to for a transfer fee, which is different than sort of the trade we get in North American sports. And he was interested in how this was going to affect sort of wages and so forth. And so he was very much a sort of a labor economics approach. He had data on statistics on player statistics and on player contracts, and was interested in whether or not things changed with that change in policy. We did have somebody give a seminar last year looking at sort of real-time betting during hockey games and trying to see how the prices changed when somebody got a power play. So this is very much the big data stuff I think that Stanley was referring to. So he had data on odds, and if one team got a power play, then how much would those odds shift for that team ultimately winning the game and things like that. So certainly the tools that that we have, I think, are useful for answering those types of questions. I know some places do actually have sports economics courses. We don't. We're often thinking about new courses, and maybe by the time you hit third and fourth year, we'll have got there. But yeah, certainly there's ways in which economists kind of think about sports, and there is a field of sports economics. It's small, like as much as I love soccer and sports, I guess some of the other questions we ask, like development and climate change, are perhaps slightly more important than the ones about soccer. So we do, but yeah, certainly it's there to an extent, and you can certainly read about. There's lots of books on these types of things that apply economics to these types of questions.
Yeah, and it's kind of cool. There's a program at Carleton, or I guess an opportunity for students to help design courses. And so perhaps the student who's asking about sports and economics, maybe you will get a chance to design your own kind of analytical course that's going to give you a chance to become the next Kyle Dubas, for example, who is the general manager of my Toronto Maple Leafs. So definitely keep that interest alive and utilize the degree to suit your needs as well. Before I bring Dawson back into the conversation, I just wanted to touch on jobs, and more specifically the capital advantage, and so maybe you can speak a bit more about why is it important for students to factor in the location of their post-secondary institution, especially when you're thinking about a field like economics, and you're going to be dealing with a lot of work that's going to be touched on or tackled at the federal level. What's the kind of the advantage of doing so in Ottawa at Carleton?
Oh, for me or Dawson? Sorry.
So it's for you. For you, Patrick.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. I think what there's certainly some advantages. We do have quite a few people who teach for us who have positions as economists in the government. So, for example, I know my daughter didn't do economics, but did political science, but did a couple of economics courses when she went through Carleton a few years ago. And she took a course which she said was very good on public policy. It was a third-year economics course taught by Brian Glab, and he works in the government. But as part of that course, they had to write sort of briefing notes on economic questions as if they were going to a minister. And so there's a lot of that expertise amongst the people who teach courses for us, and they have those, experience with the government. And so if you are interested in that type of career, certainly Ottawa is a great place to be. We have a co-op program as well, and naturally that gives you a chance to, take positions in the government without really having to uproot yourself for too long. You can do a 4-month co-op program, and you haven't have to make a big change, that sort of thing. I think as well, perhaps our students are probably a little bit more attractive when they're competing for those because of, again, that locational advantage as well. There's the Bank of Canada competition. I think someone was mentioned earlier. We have a course that's sort of geared towards preparing. This is sort of a niche 4th-year course towards sort of preparing students for a Bank of Canada policy competition as well. And so again, being in Ottawa, there's those advantages. Trying to think. Yeah, I think that's probably that.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's good. Thank you for answering that question, and again, kind of illustrating what the advantages that we have, in being in a city like Ottawa and having so much access to folks that are doing the work in real life, in real time. I'm going to bring Dawson back in to focus here because there are a couple of questions that I think you'll want to answer. One is that tricky question of, what are you going to do when you graduate? So I don't know if you already are looking into the future or are you living kind of day by day, but if you are, what are your eyes kind of glancing towards in terms of your postgraduate plans?
Yeah, so great question, first of all. Really quick, I'll just mention, in addition to the capital advantage we were just talking about, something I'm experiencing right now as I'm looking for jobs next year following my degree. A lot of times government jobs specifically will say you need to live within 50 kilometers of the headquarters office in Ottawa. So that is probably the strictest capital advantage example I could think of. In terms of what I'm going to do next year, I've been considering quite a bit. One option is, of course, graduate work. I think many people in my program and more people I talk to outside of my program, graduate work is something that they're considering. And I think that the reason behind that is people fall in love with the discipline that they explored in undergraduate, of course. And by the time you get to 4th year, you start to realize where your true passions lie. So you might have more of a general understanding of a certain field, be it economics, public policy, whatever, by the time you're in 4th year. And then a master's program would allow you to specialize in that. For the economics example, there are quite a few programs across Canada that have their own master's spin on economics, whether it's financial economics or economic development, or those are probably two of the best examples that I've seen, at least. So if you take economics in your undergraduate degree, you'll be incredibly well equipped to take on any sort of more math-based or more policy-based master's program that relates to economics. Alternatively, if you decide that a master's is not for you, there are many jobs. Again, the capital advantage, living here, you will probably come to really like the city. I know I have. It's beautiful. I'm originally from Hamilton, and it's very clear to me that Ottawa is my home. I've loved my time here, and I can see myself living here for a while. So I think you really come to familiarize yourself and get comfortable with the city. And of course, not to mention there are many jobs to be had, be it with the federal government or the provincial government offices here, or even the municipal government. Jim Watson is very involved with the university. He's the mayor of Ottawa. And again, that's just stressing the capital advantage. So to answer your question, what I'm going to do next year, yes, I'm still figuring it out, but definitely lots of options. And I think that's the point that I'd like to leave you with.
I love that you mentioned, as you're looking at perhaps graduate studies, and there are so many different takes on econ, and I keep thinking about skills and skill acquisition and then applying those skills. And it's like, if you have good hand-eye coordination, that's a skill. And when you apply that in the world of sports, you can hit a baseball, you can hit a golf ball, you can hit a tennis ball. Really, you can hit any ball that comes your way. But that application of the skills that you're getting that's really important to be able to identify, especially in a program so diverse like economics. There was a question for Professor Koh, but I think Dawson, I want you to answer it as well. And it had to do with benefiting from lectures, and how can you make the most and maximize your time in a lecture setting, and what's the best way for you to take notes and to concentrate on the material that you're receiving at the same time. So maybe from your perspective as a current student, what are some of the tips and tricks that you've been able to pick up during your time to really make the most out of your education?
Yeah, so great question. I can tell you're already ready for university. I think the biggest habit that I had to break when I came to university was just copying slides. The best benefit that you're going to get from going to a lecture is taking in what the prof has to say and looking at the lecture slides later, because most of the time good profs will post the lecture slides and then teach the lesson verbally to you while you're sitting in their lecture. So the best thing you can do is pay attention to what they're saying, and if you need a reference for the material, which you of course will, you're human, you'll have that resource later to look back on the lecture slides as well as the notes you took in class.
Awesome. And before we wrap things up, I wanted you to give you a chance to say kind of any last bits of advice for the students that are tuning in.
Yeah, for sure. Really can't stress enough the benefits of coming to Carleton. For one, we have a great community here. There are so many different resources for you, be it human resources like academic advising or the cooperative education team. There's also physical resources as well. I'm sure you probably come visit Carleton at some point. And we have a beautiful campus. We're nestled between the river and the canal, and that's one of the greatest things in my experience. Just sitting outside doing your work next to running water, for whatever reason, it's therapeutic. So yeah, I really hope that you make the right decision for you. But I know that Carleton was one of the best decisions I made, and living in Ottawa has also been the cherry on top of how great it's been. So I wish you all the best in the coming months. I know you have a lot of decisions to make, but I know you'll do what's right for you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dawson, for spending the evening with us. And I'm going to bring Patrick in again to maybe first touch on that question that was asked. So, if someone is taking your course or one of your courses or one of your colleagues as well, how can they best maximize their time in class? Obviously, taking notes is important, but what else can they do to really get the most out of the in-class experience?
Sure. Yeah. I guess one thing I think Carleton is very good at is the resources that are there sort of outside the traditional lecture. So, for example, we have the Student Academic Success Center, and one of the things you can do when you first come is you can do a lot of workshops in developing exactly these types of skills. So note-taking, exam prep, there must be 10 of these different courses, but they're all geared towards learning those skills that are going to allow you to have success. So I would kind of outside of the course, definitely take those courses. You can just sign up for them. You can sometimes do them online. You can sometimes do them in person. In terms of my lectures, I tend to go off on tangents for a bit, so that's a chance to catch up. I think that's tell a few stories about sort of Canadian economic history and apply that, but it's not it's not going to be on the exam. But and I think a lot of people know that like in an 80-minute lecture, it's hard to stay focused for the whole time. So the stuff that's really vital, I likely have said that 2 or 3 times, knowing that at any point in time, not everyone's completely attentive, and I think most people do that. And so there is a sort of, I think, a chance to find little bits of downtime, I think, in that 80 minutes, which I think is important, just to gather your thoughts and sort of make, okay, yeah, I've got this, now I'm ready to move on. But I think, like Dawson said, a lot of people will post slides. You can refer to them afterwards. If they're there in advance, print them off, bring them with you, or download them to a tablet, and you can like make notes alongside. You can kind of follow, and you've got that roadmap in front of you that says where the class is going, and you can add in the bits you think will help you as you go through. But you've already got that template there of what's going to be covered, so you know what you're looking for and what things you're looking to understand as you go through. But that'd be my advice. Certainly there's lots of resources at Carleton to help you that are not part of your program, but a part of helping you to get the skills that are going to give you that academic success. So definitely take advantage of those.
Awesome. I think it's a great place to end the event. So Patrick, thank you so much for spending some time and for sharing so much valuable information.
Okay, thank you. Thank you all very much for coming.
So this brings us to the end of the live portion of tonight's event. But if you have any additional questions, we're going to stay online with you for the next 10 minutes or so. And so about 5:45 Eastern time. So please keep those questions coming, and we'll do, again, our very best to answer those questions right in the live event Q&A. I want to once again thank Professor Coe and Dawson for spending some time, for sharing some great information, sharing some stories, and really giving us some valuable insight into the Department of Economics and the economic culture here at Carleton. This is the last event for this week, so the virtual lounge will be closed for tomorrow, but we'll reopen the FPA virtual lounge on Monday with a conversation about social work. So hopefully we'll see you or your friends online on Monday. Until then, my name is Stanley Philippe. I hope you have a really great weekend. Stay safe, stay healthy, and we will see you soon. Thank you.